chapter 20, section 1. Up until this point in history, we were pretty much a nation that's going to follow this idea of isolationism, which very simply means staying out of foreign affairs. Now, this was advised right from the beginning. George Washington, when he gave his farewell address, he talked in it. His advice was, stay free from foreign entanglements. And for a lot of years, we tried to do that. But by the time you got to the late 1800s, the industrialized nations of the world were starting to look for new land. So places like Asia, Africa, Latin America are basically being divided up, which brings us to imperialism. Imperialism is very simply the quest for colonial empires. And there are a lot of different reasons that will drive countries to be imperialistic. It could be a need for markets, it could be a need for raw materials, a desire for power, a desire for prestige. We're producing a lot, and we need people to buy that stuff. And so if you colonize someplace, they will buy your materials. And if you colonize it, you can keep other places out. American imperialism is going to be supported by a senator from Massachusetts by the name of Henry Cabot Lodge. And Henry Cabot Lodge is going to be quoted as saying, small states have no future. And when he refers to states, he's referring to nations. So small states have no future. The great nations are absorbing the waste places of the earth. And the U.S. must not fall out of line with what the rest of the world's doing. Otherwise, we risk becoming one of those small nations with no future. Alfred Thayer Mahan of the U.S. Naval War College is going to write a book, The Influence of Sea Power Upon History. And in this book, he basically says the U.S. needs a strong navy to protect our interests so we can go far away from home. We could go across the oceans and feel safe and feel protected. And so the U.S. Navy, the U.S. is going to pass a new naval policy of being second to none. If you're second to none, you're second to nobody. You're first. You won't finish behind anybody. And so we're going to start building up our sea power. We're going to start building up our navy. And by the time you get to the year 1900, we had the third largest sea force on Earth. You have some people that say, we need to spread our political system. We need to teach these, quote unquote, savages across the earth, about Christianity, about democracy. Like I said, some people wanted to spread Christianity. You can see this one just by the number of missionary societies. Missionaries' job is to go out and spread their faith. Christian missionaries would spread their Christian faith. And by the 1860s, you had 16 American missionary societies. But over the next about 40 years, that number jumps to 90 American missionary societies. You had tens of thousands traveling abroad to spread their faith. All right, let's talk about some place specific that you're going to see the United States be imperialistic with. And we're going to start by talking about Hawaii. The U.S. was very interested in Hawaii. Now, you look at the reason a lot of people like Hawaii. I mean, who doesn't want to be here right there? Tropical climate, fertile soil. Anything grows there, could grow any time of the year. Very beautiful place. Lived there for 3 years. So let's look at the beginning here. 1778. Captain James Cook, a British explorer, is going to visit the Hawaiian Islands. And he is going to name them in honor of the Earl in Britain that had financed this trip, and that was the Earl of Sandwich. He names them the Sandwich Islands. The guy who's going to end up ruling Hawaii is going to be King Kamehameha. From 1795 to 1819, King Kamehameha rules Hawaii. And one of his big accomplishments is uniting the 8 major islands. Uniting the 8 major islands. And his monarchy is going to last until 1893. Obviously, he only rules till 1819. His monarchy lasting till 1893 refers to the fact that his line of rulers lasts that long. So let's look at Hawaii here. Hawaii lies 2,000 miles west of California. And so the question becomes, why is the United States interested in these islands a couple thousand miles from our coast? And the bottom line is there's a couple big reasons. Number one, it's a great place for a naval base. It's a fantastic place for a naval base. And number two, it's a great stopover on the way to Asia. If our ships are going to be able to travel to Asia to trade or whatever, it's great to have a stopover partway across that they could get fuel and supplies at. It's a great place for a naval base so that as our ships are sailing around out there in the Pacific, we can protect them. You have some people that have other reasons as well. Some people looked at the Hawaiians as uncivilized and thought we needed to introduce them to modern society. Some people looked at it saying they need Christianity. But the bottom line is, ships are going to start arriving in Hawaii more and more often, bringing with them missionaries, settlers, traders stopping by to need supplies. But unknowingly, a lot of these ships are going to bring with them disease. The native population has no immunity built up to these diseases that they've never been exposed to before. The native population is going to start to decrease. When Cook first arrived in the Hawaiian Islands, the native Hawaiian population was about 300,000. Watch what happens to it in this short amount of time. By 1819, it's cut in half. So let's go there to about the 1820s. In the 1820s, Protestant missionaries are settling in Hawaii. And you don't get any money as being a missionary. And a lot of times you'll work other jobs, or other people will raise money for you to help provide for you to live there. These Protestant missionaries are going to settle in Hawaii. Remember, you can grow anything in Hawaii. And they're going to be growing sugarcane. And over the next number of years, the sugar investors are going to increase their control of the islands. And they're going to grow rich. And the Hawaiian economy is going to boom with this sugar. The U.S., the rest of the world, there was a sweet tooth. And the sugar industry is going to be expanding. Problem is, they need workers. The native Hawaiian workers are dying. And so you're going to see the sugar investors start bringing in Chinese and Japanese to work in the sugar fields. It wasn't long before they're going to outnumber the natives in Hawaii. If you go to Hawaii today, you will see a very high Japanese population there. This was a major concern in 1941. When we go to war with Japan, was the number of Japanese living in Hawaii at the time. By the time you get to the 1870s, Most of the land in Hawaii and most of the trade in Hawaii was being controlled by Americans. Let me point out, by Americans, not America. These were Americans that had moved from the United States to Hawaii, and they were controlling things. The United States wasn't doing this. And these Americans in Hawaii are going to be influencing the new king of Hawaii, Kalakaua. 1874, Kalakaua becomes the king of Hawaii, and these Americans are going to be influencing him. Now, in 1875, Hawaiian sugar is going to be made exempt from U.S. tariffs. The United States is going to strike a deal with Hawaii, basically saying, hey, we will let you sell our sugar in the United States, we'll let you sell your sugar in the United States, and we won't charge you the tariff that we would normally charge. This would make Hawaiian sugar a little bit cheaper without that tax on it. It would give it a preferred place in the sugar market. But for this to happen, though, Hawaii obviously has to give something in return. And what Hawaii gives in return is they agree not to allow other countries to have influence in Hawaii. That's not that big of a deal. Hawaii didn't want other countries in Hawaii telling them what to do. They barely wanted those Americans in Hawaii telling them what to do. So Hawaii is going to get this preferred place in the sugar market. This is a 10-year deal. So let's jump ahead. Got an accent all of a sudden. Let's jump ahead a decade. When you get to 1886, it's time to talk about renewing this deal. The old deal's done. And so the United States says, hey, Hawaii, if you want to extend that tax-exempt status, if you want to renew this, the United States says, we want Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was a deep water harbor. It would have been a great place for naval ships. And the United States suggests, hey, give us Pearl Harbor, we'll renew your tax-exempt status. Now, this is when Kalakaua basically goes, whoa, you're asking for too much. You're asking for part of our land. Kalakaua says no. So now what you have is American sugar growers in Hawaii that are furious. The tax will be put back on their sugar. Their sugar will cost just as much as anybody else's. They're going to lose some sugar sales. So 400 Americans are going to form a secret organization called the Hawaiian League. And the Hawaiian League is going to have two goals. Goal number one, overthrow Hawaii. Goal number two, then persuade the United States to annex Hawaii, make them part of the U.S. In July 1887, the Hawaiian League is going to force Kalakaua at gunpoint to sign a new constitution. Under this new constitution, the king will be made a figurehead. He technically is king, but he has no power. He's just there to look like the king. It will also make it so natives have very little rights to hold any office in Hawaii. The Hawaiians are going to refer to this as the Bayonet Constitution, because at this time period you had bayonets on the end of guns, and Kalakaua was forced at gunpoint to sign this new constitution. One of the first orders of business that these Americans, these Hawaiian League is going to have for the new king, or the figurehead king, is Kalakaua is going to be forced to renew the tariff-free treaty. Pearl Harbor is going to be given to the United States. Let's jump a couple years into the future here. In 1890, the United States passes the McKinley Tariff. The McKinley Tariff says all countries can now ship sugar to the United States duty-free, meaning tax-free. So all of this was for nothing. Hawaii loses that favored position because everybody had their sugar come tax-free. Another part of this McKinley Tariff is you're going to have a subsidy given to U.S. sugar producers. A subsidy is a government bonus payment. There aren't a lot of places in the United States that can grow sugar. But when you get down into some of the areas like southern Louisiana, Georgia, Florida, there's some areas. And basically, those U.S. sugar producers are being encouraged to grow more sugar by giving them a subsidy of 2 cents per pound. Doesn't sound like a lot. But in the late 1800s, that was a lot. Now they could grow sugar and sell it for 2 cents a pound cheaper without losing any money. The price of sugar drops. And when the price of sugar drops, the Hawaiian economy suffers because it was based almost entirely on sugar at this point.